It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on wadr.org. This is Newslink. We'll begin with our top stories. First, in Nigeria, where a massive flood in the northeastern region displaces more than 1 million people.
By the grace of God, we will join forces. The Borno state government, the federal government, we will take all necessary steps and wipe your tears. You have your rights with us, and that right is to see that we bring you help.
Senegalese Navy intercepts 2 large canoes transporting over 400 irregular migrants off the coast of the country. The Gambian National Assembly endorses a minimum of 5-year jail term for same-sex offences.
I strongly believe that we should increase the cap for nothing less than 10 years, so as to totally discourage it.
And the Liberian government issues an arrest warrant for 5 senior officials of the previous regime for economic sabotage. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana, Liberia and Sierra Leone. We'll begin in Nigeria, where floods in the northeastern state of Borno have displaced more than 1 million people. 6 communities, including the state capital, Maiduguri, are most affected, with thousands of homes, schools, hospitals and offices inundated. Speaking on the situation Wednesday morning, the state governor, Professor Babagana Zulum, said the displaced persons have been evacuated to safe spaces, including refugee camps. So far, authorities say 7 people have died in the incident. WAD's Usman Umar in Abuja brings us this report.
Professor Zulum revealed that food items and other necessities will be provided for the affected persons, while vendors have been contracted to feed the displaced persons in the camp. The state governor also confirmed receipt of a flood intervention fund of 3 billion naira, equivalent to $2 million from the federal government, which will be used to address the challenges of the flood. To prevent disaster in the future, the Borno government is considering long-term measures, including constituting a health committee to look into possible outbreaks of flood-related diseases. In the meantime, search and rescue operations are ongoing across affected communities to determine lives lost, while data collation of affected persons will be done immediately. Nigeria's Vice President and former Governor of Borno State, Kashim Shettima, has since returned home to commiserate with his people.
By the grace of God, we will join forces. The Borno state government, the federal government, National Emergency Management Agency, National Refugees Commission, and by God's grace, with the Northeast Development Commission, we will take all necessary steps and wipe your tears. You have your rights with us, and that right is to see that we bring you help. And this is not politics. We are telling you the truth. Whatever needs to be done will be done to wipe your tears. We are extending appreciation to you over the maturity you have displayed this far.
According to reports, 7 lifeless bodies have been discovered from the night of Tuesday to Wednesday morning. The overflow of water from Cameroon and the subsequent collapse of Alao Dam, a major water source for the state, triggered the flooding, which washed away basic infrastructure such as roads and bridges. Crocodiles, snakes and other wild animals from a zoo in the state capital have been let loose, and residents warned by authorities to stay alert. The state governor, Zulum, has promised immediate reconstruction of the dam to contain more water, demolish all structures on waterways, and compensate the flood victims. The recent disaster is yet another blow to the face of the state, grappling with a 15-year insurgency which has killed hundreds of people and displaced millions. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, the trend of irregular migration continues in Senegal almost unchecked despite recent boat accidents that have claimed several lives. The Senegalese Navy said it on Monday intercepted 2 large canoes carrying hundreds of migrants off the coast of the country. Details with Augustine Coley.
More than 420 irregular migrants were on Monday rescued by the Senegalese Navy off the coast of the country. Among those rescued by the Naval Offshore Patrol vessel were 20 children. The marine officials did not, however, mention where the migrants were intercepted or disclosed their identity. The information came a day after a tragic boat accident claimed at least 35 lives, according to a revised toll released on Tuesday by the authorities. The pirogue, reportedly transporting 150 migrants, capsized off the coast of Mbo on Sunday and was recovered on Monday. A search operation is still ongoing for the missing persons. Speaking to local media, Amadou Diouf, the prefect of Mbo, said the victims were primarily from his district. It is worth noting that Senegal has become a major sea departure point for migrants from neighboring countries seeking to reach Europe. Despite the heavy fatalities and disappearances in the Mediterranean, migrant arrivals in Spain's Canary Islands at 22,000 this year have more than doubled the figure from the previous year.
Augustine Kole with that report. Still in Senegal, a non-governmental organization known as the Action for Human Rights and Friendship, ADA, has denounced the inaction of the Senegalese government to curb irregular migration. This follows the deaths of over 30 intended migrants at sea after a boat accident. Adama Mbengue, president of ADA, is calling on the new authorities to take concrete action to actively retain young people. In the Gambia, members of the National Assembly have elevated the punishment for homosexual acts from 2 to a minimum of 5 years prison sentence. The decision to increase punishment for same-sex offences was taken during the consideration stage of the Criminal Offence Bill 2020. WADR's Zankle Jankwen Banjul has this.
This bill is the first attempt at undertaking a comprehensive review of the Criminal Code of the Gambia since its enactment in 1933 during the British rule. This instrument seeks to align the country's criminal justice legislation with current trends by removing all provisions hostile to freedom of speech as criminal defamation and sedition. The majority of members of parliament are of the view that a severe punishment should be handed to acts of homosexuality, thus the need to increase the punishment for the act from 2 to 5 years. Here is an excerpt of some lawmakers during the consideration stage of the Criminal Offence Bill 2020.
For me, any attempt to lessen the punishment for this particular section, it means we want to encourage gays. So we change from criminal to felony and make sure it is not less than 5 years.
I strongly believe that we should increase the cap for nothing less than 10 years, so as to totally discourage it.
At this juncture, the parliamentarians resorted to increasing the punishment for homosexual acts. Fabakary Tombonjata is the Speaker of the Parliament.
For 122 is commits an offence and is liable on conviction to imprisonment for not less than 5 years. Attempts to commit unnatural offences. A person who attempts to commit any of the offences specified in section 122 of this act commits a misdemeanor. We are going to change commits an offence and is liable on conviction to imprisonment for not less than 5 years.
It is important to note that same-sex marriage is prohibited in the Gambia, and this law, which was first enacted under British rule in 1933, has never been amended. The crime of homosexuality in the Gambia attracts penalties of prison terms of up to 14 years. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Sankuli Janku reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We are streaming live on WADR.org and on Facebook, WADR English Service. In Mali, former Banka's Member of Parliament Idrissa Alai Sankare was released yesterday, Tuesday, kidnapped on August 14 in Bamako, the Malian capital, by unidentified armed men. He had been held by the state security services. The member of the National Board of the Tabital Pulaku Fulani Association was able to return home, but for the moment, there is no information on the reasons for his arrest. Ogibirika has won this report by Bamako correspondent Aliu Cham.
According to information confirmed by those close to him, Idrissa Alai Sankara was released Tuesday morning. The former deputy of Bankas in the Banjagara region was finally able to return home, according to the same sources. Kidnapped on August 14, this leading member of the Tabital Pulaku Fulani Community Association was being held at the state security headquarters. He had just left the home of a candidate for the presidency of the association. His disappearance created a wave of outrage among Tabital Pulaku and his political party, the Alliance for Solidarity in Mali Convergence of Patriotic Forces. In a press release at the beginning of September, Tabital Pulaku International called on the authorities to release Idrissa Alaye Sankara without delay. His abduction prompted the association to postpone the renewal of its board, initially scheduled for mid-September, until the end of the month. For the time being, neither the military hierarchy nor the Malian authorities have communicated about this arrest.
Ogebirika with that report. Away from the Sahel, the Liberian government, through the Minister of Justice, Criminal Court C, has reissued an arrest warrant for several key officials of George Weah's administration previously arrested in connection with an alleged $6 million theft at the Financial Intelligence Agency, FIA. Those to be arrested include former Finance Minister Samuel Twe, former National Security Advisor Jefferson Kamo, and former Solicitor General Nyanti Tuan, who was then acting as Minister of Justice. Additionally, Stanley Ford and D. Moses Cooper, Director General and Comptroller General, respectively, at the Financial Intelligence Agency, will be arrested. Details with Echi Atisu.
The new rate of arrest issued by the court follows an indictment that now charges the ex-officials with economic sabotage, misuse, and illegal disbursement of public funds. Other charges include money laundering, criminal facilitation, and criminal conspiracy. This indictment is a result of a detailed investigation by the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, LACC, which alleges that the accused persons were involved in a complex scheme to siphon off government resources through unauthorized transfers and subsequent illegal withdrawal of over $5 million from the Central Bank of Liberia in late 2023. The transactions were made under the guise of official duties. The former Finance Minister Samuel D. Chia, believed to be outside the country, and Stanley S. Ford, the former Director General of the Financial Intelligence Agency, remain at large. Meanwhile, Tuan, Jefferson Kamo, and Moses Cooper were detained at the Monrovia Central Prison in July after their petition for release on recognizance was denied but later released on bail. In a fiery response on social media, Chia condemned the arrest of his colleagues and described it as a politically motivated witch hunt orchestrated to deflect from the current government shortcomings and ongoing corruption scandals. He vehemently denied the charges, claiming that they were part of a broader attempt to damage his political credibility and that of his associates from the previous administration.
Echi Atisu with that report. And just before the break, let's take you to Ghana, where a former chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Dr. Kwadu Afari-Gyan, has made a case for the judiciary to impose sanctions on individuals who file improbable election petitions. He believes sanctions will deter such actions and maintain the integrity of the legal process. From Accra, WADR's Nadiri Tete completes the story.
Speaking at the Ghana Bar Association conference in Kumasi on Tuesday, September 10, former Electoral Commission Chair Dr. Afari-Gyan warned of the dangers that baseless election petitions pose to the integrity of the courts and the Electoral Commission.
Because of this ability to cause undeserved damage to a judge or to the Electoral Commission, I'm suggesting that instead of regarding every election petition as a public interest litigation, improbable petitions should attract punitive sanctions.
Additionally, he stressed the significance of summary results sheets, what is commonly referred to as pink sheets in the electoral process in Ghana, urging political parties to handle these documents with care, especially when considering legal challenges after election results are announced.
The pink sheets are the most important, if you like, the source documents for reconstruction of election results. If you don't have authentic, duly executed pink sheets, as we say in Ghana, please think twice before you go to court.
The former EC chairperson also criticized the doctrine to cancel validly cast ballots in disputed areas instead of holding a rerun of the elections. Dr. Afari-Gyan further advised the judiciary to remain impartial, noting that political actors often try to influence the courts in their pursuit of power. For WADR, Nadiri Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and across the world on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. A massive flood in Nigeria's northeastern region displaces more than 1 million people. Senegalese Navy intercepts 2 large canoes transporting over 400 irregular migrants off the coast of the country. The Gambian National Assembly endorses a minimum of a 5-year jail term for same-sex offenses. The Liberian government issues an arrest warrant for 5 senior officials of the previous government for economic sabotage. Ahead in the news, a climate conference to examine weather-related disasters in West Africa and the Sahel gets underway in Niamey. We also have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Glad to know you are still with us. Let's take you to Niger now, where a climate conference is underway to examine the extent of disasters such as floods, drought, and food insecurity in West Africa and the Sahel. The 3-day meeting that opened in Niamey on Tuesday comes amid a worrying weather condition that affects millions of people, particularly women and other vulnerable groups. Francis Boniface has more.
Experts from member countries of the Permanent Interstate Committee for Drought Control in the Sahel, CILSS, are attending the meeting to debate climate events and disaster risk in West Africa and the Sahel. The opening session was chaired by Chad's Minister of Agricultural Production and Industrialization. In his statement, Bala noted that there is an increase in extreme climate events, in particular devastating floods, increasing food and nutritional insecurity affecting nearly 28 million Sahelians and West Africans. While adaptation options and strategies have been identified, the Chadian Minister of Agriculture said there are several gaps in the implementation process. He pointed to poor consideration of adaptation and resilience issues in the sector and cross-cutting public policy documents and planning at all levels. He added that there is a weakness in the technological adaptation capacities and mobilizing external resources. The CILSS was created in 1973 following major droughts that struck the Sahel and has since centered its activities on basic food security and the use of natural resources. It hosts 13 member states, namely Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Gambia, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, Senegal, Cabo Verde, and Togo. Others are Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Chad.
Francis Boniface reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
For today's press review, WADR's Sankle Janko Mbanjul is standing by with major headlines from the Gambian dailies.
Let's begin today's press review with the Fourier newspaper. Parliament considering bill to reinforce right to fair, speedy trial, with the photo of the National Assembly of the Gambia building as the front page of the Fourier newspaper. This other one reads, Trade Minister to table manpower agreement before the National Assembly. Farmers in Niamey decry insufficient support from government to develop operating procedures to help strengthen security institutions. Let's move on to the Point newspaper. Commonwealth has potential to be powerful force for prosperity. These are the words of the Gambia's Foreign Minister Momodu Tangara, who is currently vying for the position of the Secretary General for the Commonwealth. IGP says environmental issues are national security concerns. Mohas sends 6 students for master's program in Turkey. Mohas, of course, is the Minister of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology. World Bank Group Regional Vice President set to visit Gambia. Another story on the Point newspaper. Brikama Area Council budgets were merely based on forecast, witness told local government inquiry. GPF warns impounded vehicle owners to regularize collect vehicles. Now let's move on to the final newspaper for today, and that is, of course, the Standard newspaper. Activists ask Assembly to inquire allocation of state lands, of course, with photos of Madi Jabati, a renowned human rights activist. according to the Standard newspaper. These activists have called on the Assembly to make inquiries on state allocation. Of course, this includes the land allocated to the President of the Republic of the Gambia, President Adama Barrow, as well as his former Vice President, lawyer Ousainou Darboe, who is also the opposition leader in the Gambia. Government argues Gambians don't need degrees to vie for president. GPU to introduce tax reporting category in this year's awards. I'm afraid the
part allocated $2 million to assist the state in its recovery plans. Vice President Kashim Shettima has since visited Maiduguri for an on-the-spot assessment and to commiserate with affected communities. Telling us more is Mohammed Ibn Maigana, one of the volunteers providing relief assistance to victims in parts of the state. He has been speaking to WADR's Usman Umar.
Kindly give us this is a situation report of what actually happened and where are we at the moment in Maiduguri with respect to the flooding.
Actually, the flooding started 2 days ago. It has affected a lot of people. It has rendered many people homeless. The flooding is now in a lot of houses. It is now affecting a lot of shops, a lot of people. Even the renowned Monday market has been affected. A lot of people went to the market this morning to pack their belongings. Unfortunately, they could not do that because the flooding has already filled up the market, such that people cannot even swim in the water because the water is strong. It's like it's fighting. No matter how strong you think you are, it will, overwhelm you. So a lot of people are in difficult problem right now.
Okay, but at this moment, do we know the cause of this flooding? Is it just rainfall?
Actually, because of the water is still not, publicized, not made known, not made public as I speak to you now. But I read, in the news that it is as a result of, Aloe Dam, overflow, of the Aloe Dam that is now affecting a lot of people. Unreliably, I was told this morning that one of the dams from Cameroon has also broken. So as a result, the water is now, flowing to Maiduguri, and it is affecting a lot of, people.
Okay,
as I speak to you now, we have
a lot of people. Kindly tell us, women and children, what is their situation at this moment?
Actually, as I speak to you now, I just returned from a plaza where the son of late Gregory Joshua gave them to reside in until the situation, improves. So they will return to their various, houses. But as I speak to you now, we have more than 1,000 women with children breastfeeding, and they don't have, food to eat. They don't have anything. They don't have anywhere to go. As I speak to you now, I just returned from, the plaza. We are giving them food, and as a result of hunger, because a lot of them have been displaced since yesterday, and nobody, has supported them with food or any other thing. So we just decided to, support them with the little we have, and we've asked the public to also donate to them. So we will buy food materials, food items, and distribute it to them. And we have started.
Is there any help coming from the government before we proceed?
Actually, the government, as I speak to you now, I don't know if they are helping the victims, in other locations. But as I speak to you now in my location, I see no government official, helping anybody. I don't know if they are doing it, outside the location I am residing in.
Has this affected electricity and other basic infrastructure?
No, the electricity has just been, it was interrupted not, a few minutes ago. But as I speak to you now, we are hoping that electricity will be restored and people will, enjoy it.
Mohammed Ibn Maigana, an emergency responder in Borno State, Nigeria, where floods have displaced more than 1 million people. Up next in the sporting world, Nigeria's Super Eagles interim coach Augustine Iguavon was reported to have resigned as interim coach of the Super Eagles after the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON match day 2 qualifying matches against Rwanda, which ended 0-0 at the Amahoro Stadium in Kigali. However, Iguavon has dismissed this rumor. The news agency of Nigeria NAN reports that the rumor of the Super Eagles coach's resignation started making the round following his post-match reaction in Kigali. The interim coach, who spoke to journalists after the team touched down in Abuja, debunked the rumor as false and misleading, saying that he was misquoted. He affirmed that he was still in charge of Super Eagles and would sit down with the federation hierarchy to evaluate the team's performance following the 2 matches played. Meanwhile, Ghana's Juliani Akwa Numo will officiate this weekend CAF Confederation Cup match between Bukizo FC of Burundi and CS Sfaxien of Tunisia. Roland Nidado Adi and Theophilus Adpelanga Akwage are his assistants for the game, with Reynald Collins Amwa as the 4th official. The match commissioner for the game is Mbarak Suleiman Othman from Zanzibar, with Jean-Claude Labros from the Seychelles as referee assessor. The match will be played on Sunday, September 15, 2024 at the Stade Taib Misri Sfax in Tunisia. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukidi and Maojo Juve for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. We also stream live on WADR.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our agenda program 50-50 with Nadiri Tete, to be followed at the top of the hour of 1 p.m. by the second edition of our comprehensive news packet in French, Info Chez Vous, with Alpha Abubakar. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via